In the late 1980s, Japan, a country known for its safety, suddenly plunged into darkness. 4 little girls vanished, only to be found in haunting circumstances. And the man behind it all was given a name that sent chills across the nation: the Otaku Killer.
He didn't just kill, he photographed. He kept the bodies. He sent ashes and tiny bones to the families, along with twisted letters. This was not an ordinary crime. This was a sick ritual. This is Claw Time, where every clue leaves a scar.
I am Mina, the eyes watching the darkness, where secrets hide.
And I am Mino, the claws that rip away the mask of truth. Today, we open the case file. Tsutomu Miyazaki. This is Claw Time, where every clue leaves a scar.
But before we speak of the murders that haunted an entire nation, we must turn back time. Because no crime is born out of nothing. Every monster has an origin. And for Miyazaki, the darkness began the moment he cried out at birth.
To understand why he preyed on children, we must look into his youth, his deformed hands, his isolated boyhood, and his obsession with VHS tapes and violent manga. That was where the first scar carved into his mind.
Before he became the Otaku Killer, Miyazaki was just a boy, born in 1962. But from the very start, fate carved its first scar upon him. His hands were deformed. His wrist joints were twisted, his fingers bent in unnatural ways. He could not stretch them, could not grasp things like other children. For a child, that was a wound that could never be hidden.
In Japanese society, difference often means isolation. Young Miyazaki grew up under mocking laughter. His classmates gave him cruel nicknames. Every time he raised his hands, he heard whispers. Slowly, he began to shove his hands deep into his pockets, his eyes fixed on the ground. Loneliness became his only companion.
Instead of playgrounds, he sought refuge in his small room. On the shelves were not textbooks, but stacks of manga. At first, innocent comics, but with time, he turned to violent ones, to pornography. And soon, thousands of VHS tapes, from children's cartoons to hardcore films to violent cinema, covered every inch of his walls.
This was the breeding ground of obsession. A young man, deformed, rejected, unaccepted, found substitute pleasure in violent imagery. He began to identify with it. Where he couldn't control his own life, he controlled the world inside those tapes.
Night after night, his room glowed through the window, lit until dawn. But inside, there was no laughter, no conversation, only the endless whir of VHS reels. In that darkness, a monster was quietly taking shape, not born, but nurtured by a cold society.
To understand the 4 murders to come, we must first understand this beginning. A man cut off from his community, consumed by violent imagery, and slowly turning his shame into suffering for others. By the time he struck his first victim, Tsutomu Miyazaki was no longer just a deformed young man. He had become a predator.
Sudden silence. August 22nd, 1988. The outskirts of Tokyo. A narrow road stretched across green fields. There, a 4-year-old girl played alone. Her name was Mari Kono. In her hand, a red lollipop. On her feet, tiny plastic sandals. Her mother turned away for only a few minutes, and when she looked back, Mari was gone.
Miyazaki had been watching from afar. He was a shadow, silent, yet locked onto his prey. Deformed hands made him clumsy in the world's eyes, but to him, those same hands became weapons. He approached, offering a cartoon VHS tape, a sweet reward for innocence.
The little girl followed. The car rolled away from her familiar street. When she realized home was far behind, it was too late. The vehicle stopped in a forest clearing where sunlight pierced the ground only in broken slivers. He opened the door, leading her into the darkness, footsteps crunching as birds stopped singing. Mari shivered. She began to cry. Miyazaki said nothing. He raised his twisted hand, veined, misshapen, and tightened it around her throat. The little girl struggled, her tiny fingers clawing at his grip, but it was useless. Her cries broke into silence. Her trembling turned still. And as she collapsed, the forest drowned in a chilling quiet.
This was the method he would repeat: strangulation. No weapon, no knife, no gun. He wanted to feel life being crushed directly beneath his hands. For predators like him, pleasure comes from the process, from absolute power over a fragile body.
But death was not the end. He did not leave. He sat beside Mari's small corpse, staring at her lifeless face. And then he raised a camera. Click, click. Each photograph preserved. To Miyazaki, she was not only dead, she was now a souvenir of his obsession. Death
was about criminologists called trophies. He didn't just keep memories, he kept pieces. Miyazaki returned again and again. He mutilated the remains, taking parts home, hiding them in the dark. For him, this was endless pleasure.
Time passed. The body decayed, yet he still returned. Standing over the remains, he took more photographs, sitting for hours in silence. While Mari's parents desperately searched for their daughter, the killer had turned her into an object in his grotesque collection. Then, body was found in a sparse forest. Rotting leaves blanketed the ground, ancient trees casting shadows. Her small frame lay twisted on the damp earth, hair tangled and matted. Beside her, a single white plastic sandal. The red lollipop had fallen, dirt clinging to it. The air was thick with the stench of decay. Insects swarmed in clouds, composing a deathly symphony. Police officers stood frozen. Some turned away, unable to look.
There were no signs of panic from the killer. The scene was tidy, almost staged. That cold precision led investigators to suspect this was not a random abduction, but a ritualistic killing.
Police searched the woods, setting up cordons. But in the 1980s, DNA forensics had not yet advanced. They recorded the scene, collected small items like the sandal and the lollipop.
At the time, they believed this was an isolated case, a missing child or a simple abduction. No one realized this was only the prologue to a nightmare. That hesitation gave Miyazaki room to kill again.
October 3rd, 1988. A chilly afternoon in Tokyo. A 7-year-old girl walked home from school, her satchel heavy on her back, feet tracing the narrow road toward home. She did not know that from the shadows ahead, a pair of eyes were watching.
Miyazaki appeared again. For him, one murder was not enough. The addiction to power drove him to seek another victim. He chose young girls walking alone, easy to approach, easy to lure. With his plain, unimposing appearance, he could come close without raising fear.
A pale car slowed to a stop by the roadside. The door opened. He forced a strained smile, holding out a sweet promise, a toy, a cartoon VHS tape. The child's innocent eyes lit up. She stepped inside. The door shut. The empty street was left behind, only a single leaf drifting down. He drove her to an abandoned room in a remote area. Inside, darkness, the smell of mildew, stained walls. She cried. He gave no answer. Then, his gnarled hand wrapped around her neck. She pleaded, her sobs breaking into gasps, but he tightened his grip, until those innocent eyes widened and closed forever.
He did not kill to escape. He killed to feel. And once the moment was over, he craved a relic. This time he went further. He burned part of the body. From ashes and tiny bones, he prepared a package.
Days later, at the small home where her parents waited in despair, the mailbox clicked open. Her father reached in. Inside lay a small box and an envelope. His hands shook as he opened the box. When he saw the ashes, the fragments of bone, he collapsed at the doorway. The box slipped from his trembling hands, spilling ashes across the tiles.
Inside the envelope were jagged, childish words. "These are your daughter's bones. Cry harder." Words like a blade, piercing the parents' hearts. They did not just lose their child. They were mocked in their grief. This is the height of perversion, re-traumatization. Miyazaki made the family his second victim. He wanted them to relive the moment of loss, every time they saw that box of bones.
The parents screamed in anguish. Neighbors stood in shock, and somewhere, in the shadows, Miyazaki sat in silence, satisfied. He knew this pain would haunt the family forever. To him, it was a game without end.
Police launched an immediate investigation. They compared handwriting, examined the ashes.
But in the late 1980s, forensic science could not trace the source.
The case stalled. Miyazaki kept his distance, leaving no traces at the scene. He manipulated the game, while police chased shadows in despair. The second case confirmed his ritual. Kill, preserve, turn the body into a trophy, and inflict terror on the family. This was no longer just murder. It was a message. I exist. I control.
Once was not enough. Twice was not enough. Each act only fueled his hunger. And then, winter came, carrying the third victim. Small footsteps echoing down a lonely alley. December 12th, 1988. The winter wind cut sharp, the sky heavy with gray. A 4-year-old girl stepped outside to play near her home. She carried a pink backpack and a small comic book. Neighbors saw her one last time before her tiny figure vanished around the corner. Miyazaki had chosen the moment. He knew winter streets were empty, the cold keeping people indoors, and he needed to repeat the ritual that obsessed him. Lure, control, and strangle the life from a child's body.
He led her down a deserted path. The air was cold, mist clinging to the ground. She trembled, clutching the straps of her backpack. Miyazaki stayed silent. Then, suddenly, he lunged. His twisted, veined hands clamped around her throat. The little girl thrashed, gasping for air, her eyes widening, then shutting forever. As she fell, her comic book slipped from her hand, its pages fluttering in the wind. Then silence.
On the empty road, police found only the pink backpack tossed aside, and the comic book was several pages torn. The body did not appear immediately. Days later, they discovered a patch of wasteland, heavy with the stench of decay. Her small frame lay dissolving into the damp soil, hair matted, bruises still visible around her neck.
He left little physical trace. But this time, he left something else. Letters. Detailed, taunting descriptions sent directly to the authorities. This was not a killer hiding. This was a killer demanding to be acknowledged. The same method again, strangulation. He craved the sensation of breath slipping away, but now he climbed further into depravity. He wrote letters, long, rambling, filled with grotesque detail.
I held her. She cried. She begged. I listened, then squeezed harder. The smell of skin, the muffled cries. I remember it all. These were not confessions. They were perverse diaries, scripts he wrote for himself, each word carving deeper into the family's wound.
Serial killers often write to relive their crimes. For Miyazaki, the letters were a way to experience it again on paper. He didn't just kill. He wanted the public to read. He wanted the parents to picture their child's death in vivid detail. It was the ultimate act of manipulation.
In another letter, he mocked the child's sobs, writing distorted sounds, hic, hic, like he was sneering at her terror. Each page was another knife twisted into her parents' hearts.
With the third murder, he escalated. From action to words. He no longer killed in silence. He needed an audience. This was the sign of a killer obsessed with himself, desperate to be remembered.
And in the cold of a Tokyo winter, as parents read every crooked line in despair, Miyazaki sat in his darkened room, scribbling more twisted sentences, like claws scratching endlessly on rotten wood. When the detailed letters arrived, police examined every line. They saw the same handwriting, the same tone. A suspicion rose. These cases were no longer isolated. They began to connect all three murders, for the first time considering a serial killer. But without physical evidence, they could only circle closer, never close enough to catch him. And Miyazaki kept preparing. Skirt, cicadas buzzing, children laughing faintly, then silence. June 6th, 1989. A 5-year-old girl asked to play outside. Her mother said, "Be home before dark." She nodded and ran out. That was the last time her family saw her alive.
After 3 murders, he no longer hid. He hunted openly, like a predator drunk on blood.
His car stopped. A crooked smile, her small hands pulled inside. The cicadas screamed on, but for her family, silence fell. In a deserted patch of land, she cried for her mother. His hands closed on her throat. Gasps, terror, silence. Her small body crumpled on the damp earth.
The method was the same, but this time, her body was found sooner. Police now saw the pattern. The predator was slipping.
She lay among dead leaves, clothes torn, hair tangled. Beside her, a broken branch from her final struggle. This time, footprints and tire marks remained.
Police had clues, tracks, footprints, hair. And soon after, when Miyazaki tried to lure another girl, her father caught him in the act. The monster was finally in police hands.
But 4 small lives were already gone. Police records reduced them to cold numbers. Female victim, age 4, age 7, age 4, age 5. Numbers in place of childhoods. When police entered Miyazaki's private room, they froze. On the walls, the floor, the shelves, stacked to the ceiling, were more than 5,000 VHS tapes. Labels scrawled crookedly. Children's cartoons, child pornography, gore-filled manga, disturbing live footage. In the middle of this cramped, suffocating space, a low table, where he sat for hours drowning in his twisted world. On June 17, 2008, at the Tokyo detention house, the rope tightened. Justice ended his life, but the shadows he cast still haunt Japan.
That sight earned him the label, the Otaku Killer. But in truth, Miyazaki was not just an otaku. He weaponized the subculture as a mask while feeding a darker obsession: sexual violence and absolute control. For him, media was not just for watching. It was raw material, fuel, to replay and recreate on real victims.
The photos he took, the bones he kept, became his collection. He no longer distinguished fantasy from reality. He lived inside a world he directed, where he was both filmmaker and killer.
From deformed hands, childhood ridicule, isolation, withdrawal into his room, Miyazaki found only one outlet for power: control. And the ultimate form of control was stealing life itself.
Tsutomu Miyazaki was arrested in 1989, but justice did not come swiftly. For nearly 2 decades, 1989 to 2008, his case shook Japan. Court sessions dragged on, debates raged.
The defense argued insanity, schizophrenia, hallucinations, uncontrollable urges. But prosecutors countered. Miyazaki knew exactly what he was doing. He planned. He concealed. He taunted police with letters. This was not unconscious madness. It was deliberate, calculated depravity.
In court, Miyazaki sat expressionless. No tears, no apology, only vacant eyes and those twisted hands resting on the table. The same hands that strangled 4 children.
After 19 years of arguments, the court ruled. He was fully aware. He was responsible. The sentence: death.
On June 17, 2008, at the Tokyo detention house, the rope tightened. Justice ended his life, but the shadows he cast still haunt Japan. The Miyazaki case left not only grief for 4 families, but a scar across society. The media branded him the Otaku Killer, and suddenly millions of manga and anime fans found themselves under suspicion.
The government tightened censorship. Restrictions on violent and obscene media grew harsher, especially anything involving children. The otaku community was pushed further into the shadows, stigmatized as deviant, because of one murderer. And yet, this case stood as a grim reminder. Even in a society praised for safety and order, monsters can emerge.
4 little girls, ages 4, 7, 4, and 5. Lives stolen before they could grow. While the killer's name endures, theirs fade into darkness.
Take a few seconds of silence for the victims. Do not only remember the killer, remember the children. Tsutomu Miyazaki, was he the product of a diseased mind or a society that abandoned the weak?
What do you think? If you were the detective, would you call this a personal tragedy or a warning for us all? And when one monster falls, another shadow rises.
New Year's Eve, 2000. In Tokyo, an entire family of 4 murdered inside their home. The killer stayed for hours, eating, browsing their computer, before vanishing. To this day, no one has been caught.
That was the Setagaya murders. Join us in the next episode.
You've been listening to Claw Time, Mina and Mino. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow the podcast and subscribe to our channel.
Leave us a review, drop a comment, or share it with a friend. Your support keeps us digging, scratching into the darkest files.
This is Claw Time, where every clue leaves a scar.